Snyder, embracing a jilting neoliberal politic, plunged Detroit into bankruptcy, making even more precarious the political and economic standing of its mostly black citizens. In so many ways, as Jodie Adams Kirshner says in the title of this arresting and affecting book, the city was just plain broke. Broke exposes our stark neoliberal nightmare for what it truly is, a socially depraved ideology that touts the free market as the ultimate solution for the various problems that it helps to create, including shifts in the auto industry, automation's impact on labor, and the housing and mortgage crises. Too often, critics and analysts find false consolation in data to grapple with these economic trends and troubles. To be blunt, many of us are enamored with statistics. A more dramatic analytical framework and a far more compelling moral response are required. Broke's narrative offers just that. Its case study style snatches off the convoluted cloak of data to reveal the deep and personal scarring of an American urban community deliberately placed in a spiral of economic despair. Detroit's economic woes are not exclusively the result of political mismanagement. To be sure, that narrative is easier to digest than one that highlights the urban impact of post-industrialization, outsourcing, and the systematic privatization of public education. Those problems are real and have contributed to Detroit's unique situation. Broke is at its thrilling best when it usefully mines the real-life experiences of Detroit's gritty residents. It shines brightly when it depicts how residents are directly impacted by laws and policies that are crafted well beyond their municipal purview. At times, Broke seems to be all about telling these individual stories, how Charles, Lola, or Miles wrestles with debilitating economic circumstances. At other times, Broke surveys the financial crises of a city under assault by shifting economic paradigms and predatory developers and their political enablers. But in the end, Broke isn't about how any of the enduring protagonists of Detroit are cash poor. Nor is it about the chronic financial woes of a city in intermittent financial disarray. Broke is about how the entire system of governance itself is broke. Kirshner persuasively argues that the bankruptcy option for cities is a relatively new one and a strategy that has largely proved ineffective. The option became viable in the late 1970s after federal and, by extension, state assistance to cities peaked. In 2013, Detroit became the largest American city ever to enter bankruptcy. More than 70 cities have followed that course since 2007. This isn't merely a Detroit problem, but as Kirshner makes abundantly clear, one that looms large for dozens of other mostly urban communities vulnerable to a violent economic seizure and financial takeover. As it has done in other industrial pursuits, Detroit has sadly pioneered a troubling trend. The Motor City is a harbinger of the trauma to come. Federal and state governments, agencies, and policies are just as responsible for the crisis in the American city as any local or city government. In the case of Detroit, federal and state governments, Republican and Democratic alike, have colluded to systematically defund and underfund the once teeming metropolis. It is an unquestionably tragic entry in the ledger of America's vexed history with its urban centers. For example, in 2000, John Engler, the near-Dickensian governor of Michigan who promoted an agenda of supply-side property tax cuts, privatization of state services, a hike in sales tax, and welfare and educational reform, ended the requirement for city workers to live within the city limits. This had an immediate and deleterious impact on Detroit and its capacity to sustain its eroding tax base. At the same time, in a bitter irony, it subsidized the suburbs of Detroit from the new economy jobs in the 5% of Detroit that was in full recovery. To make matters worse, years later, neither Republican Governor Rick Snyder nor Democratic President Barack Obama offered to bail out Detroit. A couple of burning questions, however, must be answered. How can the same government entities that were responsible for Detroit's malaise experience a change?